My puppy dog, the puppy dogger, the puppy dogger. So, hello. This is part two of my series. Maybe I'll make a part three of going within oneself and how we do it. I can use myself as the perfect example for this because I do it every day. And it isn't easy. I'm not promising anything. But it is doable. Okay, we can definitely do it. We can go within ourselves. And when we encounter any kind of situation that is difficult, like if we're challenged with anything from anyone, we can we can stop ourselves in the moment that we are ready to snap, or that we're ready to do what we always used to do, like knee-jerk reactions to people. I've seen people who have very hardened knee-jerk reactions. I have, for example, on Facebook, there were guys that had a crush on me, like 60-something-year-old guys, and they were all over me and always. And I was lonely and I felt unappreciated, so I thought that was kind of cool that they were into me. But then, as soon as I asked them something that was sort of a bit critical or a bit political, or that wasn't really on their page politically, as soon as I said something, a very fierce, harsh, knee-jerk reaction happened. Uh, One guy would say to me, "I am so ugly, he wants nothing to do with me," after he's been courting and courting. So I said, okay, so if you find me ugly, then it's better if you leave then and go hang out with some other chicks. And then he says, "No, I didn't mean that." I said, "But you just told me I'm really ugly and it makes you sick and all of it." Yeah, but and then he just he could not even face his own reaction, that the actual, the statement that he made. He couldn't even face that. Another guy who was courting me also, who looked quite similar, also in his 60s, almost bald, and Italian guy. And I felt sorry for that guy because he said he also had tried to commit suicide, and I felt really badly sorry for him because I know what it's like. I have 2 suicide attempts behind me. And so I was talking to him, but that was the only time he talked about something else other than his sexual fantasies. So he kept it up with always sexual fantasies about me, and it was flattering, but it was a little bit lopsided in the discussion subject, right? I mean, if I get to meet someone, if I ever want to meet someone, not in person, but at least on the internet, and hang out with people and enjoy their company to some degree, I am also craving some intellectual conversations. So I said something about this. I said, "So how come you only talk about sexual things?" And immediately it was perceived as an insult, as a threat, as probably a recurring theme in his life that he then later on acts out. The recurring theme is I am no good for anything. I don't amount to anything. That's what my parents told me over and over again. So I better act it out and make sure that I actually deserve to be called that. So that is what Arjanov calls the homeostasis that we build between the outside world and the inside, so that the inside doesn't come out like a shock. So that we kind of find an excuse why our parents said that about us. Because if we didn't have an excuse for the parents saying you amount to nothing, then it would be such a terrible trauma and such terrible pain. I did nothing to deserve this. Why would they do this? That would mean they don't love me. And this feeling they don't love me is too overwhelming for a child. And it becomes this huge, diffused pain, this gloomy pain that later on we don't even know anymore what it is, what it actually was, why it is so big now, and where this comes from, this big ball of pain. So, and these act outs and these knee-jerk reactions. So he recreates himself with this, so he can, inside of himself, sort of feel like, yeah, he deserves to be called that, because that's why his parents, because he deserves it. I've heard other people say this in other contexts. Many times I've seen this. So this is a phenomenon that happens. This is a trigger reaction, of this is a part of our defense mechanism. And that's why people sabotage themselves also, so that later on they can say, well, yeah, my parents didn't love me because, I really didn't try at all, so that's why I'm a lazy kid or whatever. And that I'm lazy, that's why they didn't like me, So the realization they didn't like me just for who I am, without being lazy, without doing anything wrong, That's just too overwhelming. So anyway, it's how the people sabotage themselves, and to such degree that their lives are completely in complete pieces, and sometimes to the point of illness and even death and homelessness and all of this. So it's very tragic. So, but anyway, this guy was badly sabotaging in this communication with me on Facebook, and there was the communication going on because there was some connection going on, because I felt flattered. I felt like, yeah, there's someone who likes me. It doesn't happen very often. And I also felt a connection in empathy, because he said he has tried to commit suicide. So immediately I felt tremendous empathy and compassion for him, because that's awful. That's awful that someone has to be in such despair. So, because I know, because I've been there myself. So anyway, as soon as I said, so why do you only talk about this lust thing? Why can't we talk about something else, something that goes a little further beyond ourselves, beyond the self, beyond this me right now. So immediately this hits the old pain in him, the pain, I amount to nothing, I am worthless. My parents think I'm worthless. And the pain is so tremendous that it flares up, even though he sabotages himself, not, I wouldn't say deliberately, but very subconsciously, So that's why he falls into these grooves, into these behavioral grooves. It's in form of a very subconscious level sabotaging attempt. But the pain is still the same as it ever was. So as soon as I said that, it pulled up the entire childhood pain, like one big fountain of pain coming up. And he was in so much pain, and the first thing was, because he's so unconscious about it, and his unconscious knee-jerk reactions that he has to people, so that he has to lash out. He has nothing else to offer in that moment to himself, other than to lash out against someone who triggers this pain, not even intentionally, not even meaning to trigger anything, not even meaning to be hurtful or anything, but immediately this pain comes up, and a horrible knee-jerk reaction. And he says to me something like, I look like a dyke, like a tranny, actually. So, and he wasn't sure whether I was a guy or a woman. And so after all this sexual lusting and wanting and complimenting and so on. Suddenly it turns the other extreme. He wants to really hurt because I triggered his hurt. So, and particularly in a situation where you were trying to bond with someone, where you're trying to meet someone, when a relationship is still in a very vulnerable stage, you don't want to snap and lash out and hit someone either physically or psychologically, which hurts equally much and sometimes even worse. So that in turn will trigger the other person's pain, like my insecurities, not feeling like I don't have a Barbie doll face, my face is, it's kind of boyish and all of this, and pain comes up, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not precious enough, and there it is, the old childhood pain. Because I tell you what, if we didn't have that childhood pain, these things would not be triggered. If there is no pain, what can there be triggered? Nothing. You just stay in an equanimity, in a blissful state. Like, why is he saying this? Makes no sense to me, but whatever, But if we have pain, it shoots up, and the pain is intense. And we don't even know why it is so intense. It just is so intense, and we just get so furious or so hurt or so in so much pain that we want to either lash out or drink or take drugs or cover it up with something or cover it up with another self-image that we put on top of it in order to deceive ourselves, thinking, no, I'm perfect, it's all good, we are on top of it. It's like a construction of mental self-images put on top to press that pain down. That's what people are doing every day, permanently, all the time. That's the problem of whole humanity. Okay? That's what Arjanov said. He said humanity is neurotic, highly neurotic. Many people, Sigmund Freud said it, Carl Jung said it, the Sai Baba, the Thich Nhat Hanh talks about it, and Jiddu Krishnamurti talked about it all the time. That this hurt that everyone has, everyone is hurting. Everyone is putting an image above that hurt to press that hurt down. So I explained now the mechanisms of all of this, why this is happening, and how do we, this is very important that people learn this about themselves. Very important in order to heal this, otherwise we cannot heal it. So how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this, particularly in a moment, in this threshold moment of us being ready to press that pain down with something that is unproductive, either with drugs, alcohol, or self-images, masquerading ourselves, or even worse, lashing out at someone, physically or psychologically, which is equally painful. So how do we stop ourselves? First of all, we need to know what this mechanism is and why we're doing it. And then we need to practice meditation. Meditation happens in daily life, in daily living. It can happen right here on the couch. You sit on the couch. You don't need to sit in a lotus position on a yoga mat. You can sit on a couch. You can look out the window, and you can turn your radios off. Create stillness in your place. Even if someone is yelling around you, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's this moment where you want to say to yourself, enough. I am not lashing out anymore. I'm not reacting anymore to that other person who is obviously in pain, or he would not be in his distress, in his hollering, controlling, reprimandation, whatever. So I can stop myself right now. I've done it earlier today. And even if that means incredible sobbing comes out, incredible, it can even mean you have to go into your bedroom, close the door, go under your blanket and scream into your pillow. Do that if you are under so much pressure, if your body is under so much tension that it feels like throwing something. Or going onto someone's throat like this. It's very easy to do. It is shakes us up so much that we feel like we want to go onto someone else's throat. Go into your room, close the door, make sure the animals are all safe, someone's there for them. Go under your thick quilted blanket, scream into your pillow. Put the pillow like around your face like this, so that the sound gets buffered, and scream into it, and scream it all out. It is not the ideal situation, because the dogs, they can still hear the screams, and then they wonder what's going on, then they worry. Yes, it all goes through their heads too. They worry, they don't want you to suffer, they think something is wrong. It's better to have a soundproof room for that, with padded walls, so it can completely absorb the sound, and a really thickly padded ground, so that you can hammer into that mattress or into pillows or whatever that you have in there and scream. That's my dream, is to have a soundproof room, a primal room, so-called primal room. I had one in Germany, but I moved, and that 5,000 Deutschmark at that time were equivalent to $4,000 or $4,500, all gone. Someone else took it for their children to play in, whatever. Yeah, but I want to have that again. I do want to have that again sometime. I want to have a whole room, not just like a construction, but a whole room of padded walls and soundproof and safe. A safe place where you can let that tension out, because it will still be worth it for me, because I will be making use of that, I know, for the rest of my life. But some people may not even need this anymore. Some people are already so advanced with the meditation and with the mindfulness and the equanimity inside, that they don't need to have this anymore, that it doesn't build up like that. So I'm still in the stage where the anger builds up tremendously, and where it completely takes over my brain, and where I end up praying to my blue God, because I don't know how to deal with this. I really don't know. I'm glad I have my blue God to protect us. And I think everyone needs that. Just don't take the Bible or the Quran. Just don't take something that was dictated to you by other people, by dictators who want people to be under them or something. The infinite universe, give it a name. It protects you. The infinite universe is not a man with a beard. It's not something that punishes you or puts you into hell. You put yourself into hell with your act-outs, with your sabotages, with your inabilities to deal with each other, with people going to war. That's how you create hell here, right here on earth, in this lifetime. So if we want to make a paradise, it's up to each single person to create this safe haven for themselves, for their own brains, first of all, okay, to deal with this properly, to deal with their own emotional problems properly, and if possible, get away from those people who permanently trigger you. For example, my husband is permanently triggering me. It's not an ideal situation for me. It's not, maybe it is a soul contract, maybe we're supposed to learn from each other. But sometimes I feel like I can't deal with it. Sometimes I feel like it gets a little bit out of hand. It gets out of control. The trigger, this, when someone controls you. I mean, it's not the worst case, I've seen much worse situations where husbands are whistling for their wives and treating them like slaves. My husband and I were on the same level with animal rights and caring and kindness. It's just that he has issues, I have issues, we trigger each other. Okay, this happens in almost all relationships, even in those relationships that say to the outside world, we are perfect, kind of like my parents, And there's nothing perfect underneath. Okay? It's just suppressed stuff. That's even worse. It's worse because then they are masquerading, and when they're masquerading, they can't see anyone else in their pain. Because if they saw the other person in their actual pain, that would mean they would have to also see their own pain, which they don't want to do, so they run away from it. Thus, they don't see the other person in their pain. Thus, the children feel not understood, and so on. And this entire network of neurotic interaction happens. And that's what I'm trying to do with my videos. I'm trying to get this message across to people that we can stop this. We can stop it right now. As Jiddu Krishnamurti said, of course we can. Of course we can stop it right now. Okay? Once you see it, once you see yourself and your own sabotaging act-outs, your own inability to see the other person, to the inability to see your own pain. Once you recognize this, then action happens. In that moment, you go, okay, so action meaning I'm stopping right now with my act out. So I'm not going to go any further. I'm going within myself, even if it means I shaking my whole body. I go into my pillow and I scream into my pillow, or I cry my eyes out, or I paint, or I write poetry, or I talk to a friend. No more lashing out at someone else. No more going at someone else's throat. This is so incredibly important. I couldn't teach this if I wasn't going through this myself. If I had not gone through this myself and hadn't been in all these different stages that I see other people are struggling in right now. So I hope it reaches someone. That's all I can do. I'm going to go away for 2 days. I'll be back. I'll make a third one. Okay, you guys take care. Bye-bye.